Happy New Year, everyone! We are stepping into the year of the snake, according to the Chinese Zodiac. The snake symbolizes transformation, renewal, and personal growth. This year encourages us to release old baggage and embark on a journey of embracing the new, taking bold steps towards a better future. What better time to have as our guest someone who teaches us how to take a big leap in life, just like the title of one of his books, The Big Leap. Today's guest is Gay Hendricks. He is a renowned psychologist, the author of numerous books, many of which have become bestsellers, and holds a Ph.D. in psychology from Stanford University. He is also a professor in counseling psychology with decades of experience in personal growth and transformation. Let's take a leap of faith, guys, and elevate our personal development to the next level with the insights of Gay Hendricks. Enjoy the episode. Hello, Gay, and Happy New Year. Welcome to Perspective of the Mind. It is so good to connect with you.
Well, thank you, Deanna, and Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you very much. So, we are already in the year 2025, and actually, that's the year of change, transformation, growth, according to the Chinese Zodiac. So, I would like today to discuss with you some of the transformative insights, especially from your book, The Big Leap. Here is the book. I don't know if it's like visible, but yeah, that's the book. Those are insights basically about achieving greater level of success, greater level of happiness, greater level of peace. And I hope that this episode will help as many people as possible to navigate this year of change. And before we discuss how to take the big leap, I would like to take a step back and discuss with you firstly the upper limit problem.
Mm.
You mentioned the upper limit problem in your book, and you say that the upper limit problem holds us back from, I'm quoting you, all the love, financial abundance, and creativity. So, what's the upper limit problem about? Is my first question.
Okay, the upper limit problem is something that everybody experiences at one time or another. And what it is when you sabotage yourself after you've been more successful, or you kind of punish yourself for something good happening. Like, oh gosh, here's a great example. I think I mentioned this in The Big Leap. Um, Two friends of mine had a big wedding at the Stanford Chapel, big hundreds of people in attendance, two prominent families. And then they were very happy and they got in their car and they drove off to their honeymoon. And along the way, a hubcap came off of the car. And the new husband, chased it down into a wooded area and got the hubcap and brought it back. But along the way, he got poison ivy all over him. And so he spent the next 3 days in the hospital being treated for poison ivy, being packed in ice, and that kind of thing. Now, that's a very big example, but most people don't have those kind of big examples. What happens is, like, you're walking down the street and you're feeling good. This happened to me a while back. I looked in a window and I saw some beautiful rings in the window of a jewelry store. And I stopped for a moment and appreciated them. And it's a jewelry store that I had been in many times, and I didn't have time to stop in it, but I knew the owner and that kind of thing. And so I stopped to look at the jewelry. And then I walked on down the street. And later I realized that 10 seconds later, after I'd seen all of that beauty, I started thinking about poverty in India and some children I'd seen in India on a trip to India where they were doing a job that they shouldn't be doing, carrying things that a 10-year-old shouldn't be carrying. And
Mhm.
child labor is what you would call it. Um, and so, how did I get from appreciating beauty to suddenly thinking about poverty? Well, when I traced it down, I realized I saw the beauty and then I had a thought as, oh, there are so many people in the world that can't afford that beauty. And then that led me to think of these poor children in India, probably the poorest people I'd ever met. And And these were kids that were working all day long for a
Yeah.
rupee, which was worth a dime at the time. And so I went in that. So I punished myself for feeling good, for enjoying beauty by immediately feeling guilty about it, that the whole world couldn't have it, and then going into that sequence of unpleasant thoughts. So that's the upper limit problem.
So basically, when we reach a certain level of success, in doesn't matter in which area of our lives, then we self-sabotage ourselves so that we cannot experience even a greater level of success. But why do we do that?
Because of fear, because somewhere in your childhood, usually, you got something happened that scared you, or something happened to one of your parents that scared them and made them pass down a belief to you. You see, a lot of our beliefs don't just start with ourselves, they start with other people in our past. Like, for example, there are only a couple of limiting beliefs that really get in the way of people being successful. One of them is a belief that I'm fundamentally bad, that you're fundamentally flawed in some way.
Yeah.
And that usually happens sometimes very early in life, where you begin to feel that because it's passed down to you, maybe from your family. Another one is the feeling of not deserving success, that because I've done something wrong in the past or because of some reason, I can't enjoy success. I'm the wrong gender, I'm the wrong skin color, I'm the wrong country or whatever it is. It's some belief that you have that keeps you held back.
Hey guys, just for a second and we'll go back to the episode. Can you please subscribe to the channel and give a like to the episode if you, of course, if you like what you have watched so far. It will give me a feedback that I bring value to you and my work matters in a way that it makes a difference, which is the purpose of everything that I do. Thank you so much and let's go back to the episode. Yeah, that's a huge thing and I'm wondering how can we change that? Especially when we are talking about those unconscious beliefs that are coming from our developmental years and they're so deeply ingrained in our brains. How can we change that? For example,
Well, you
as
change
you
it.
said,
Yeah,
I'm not good enough. Let's say this belief, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve that. How can we change that?
great question. So if you have that belief, that's probably the number one belief is I'm fundamentally flawed. I don't deserve the good things of life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first look and see, did anybody else in your family, the three generations that you may know or four, did any of them have that same program, that same belief? So look into your past first in a friendly way. You don't have to make yourself sick to get better. You can just get better all the time. You don't have to ever be sick. And so um, the second thing to do is to understand that they all come out of fear and to make friends with your fear. Don't deny it. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. Get comfortable at saying, I'm scared and I don't know what to do, because that's how human beings spend a lot of their lives. And so just acknowledge your fear, get friendly with it. Don't make it a big, oh, I can't feel that. Make it a, a, a dancer that you dance with sometimes. So fear has a message to it, and it says, I don't know how to solve the problem that you've given me to solve. Okay, that's what
Yeah.
our nervous system is saying to us. And fear has been around for hundreds and hundreds of thousands, probably millions of years. Like the human brain, Diana, hasn't changed much in the past 50,000 years. So the actual stuff inside here hasn't changed. But what's changed is the software, what we're programming it with.
Mm-hmm.
And now think of your brain as being, you asked the question, how do you change it? Here's how to change it. Think of your brain as being like a computer. You've taken an old program out, I don't deserve love, and you put a new program in called I deserve love. I deserve abundance. I deserve the good things of life. And so to let yourself replace the old programming that you've been carrying around with a new set of programs. Like, I can be successful. Like my friend George, he's probably in his 60s now, but when I first met him, he was in his 30s.
Mhm.
And now he's been happily married for 30 years. But when I met him, he was a kind of a what I would call a lonely single guy. I don't know if you have those in Bulgaria or Germany where you spend a lot of your time, but we have a lot of lonely single guys over here. And
We do as well.
so, do you? um, so, as I worked with him, it became clear that he'd had a bunch of things happen in his life, like his father left his mother when he was a baby, and he was raised by his father.
Mhm.
And his father didn't have a good opinion of women because mom had run off with another man and they never saw her again, basically. And so, and and it's not a rarity. Things like that do happen. Traumas do happen in childhood. And so George had grown up around this feeling of women can't be trusted. You can never trust a woman. They'll run off and leave you. And so when he got to be a grown up, what did he do? He created one unsuccessful relationship after another. In other words, when I met him, he had never had a real successful relationship. And as he was in his 30s, beginning to be in his 30s, that begins to press on you, that if you haven't solved some big problem that you want to solve in yourself by the time you're 30, you begin to feel the pressure of time.
Yeah.
And so as we worked together, though, he came to understood his fear and understood this whole programming of his about where it came from, about did he deserve love? No, because women will leave you. And so he got rid of that program, click, and put in a new program, which is I can enjoy the love I want and need. That's his new program. And 6 months later, he met the most wonderful woman. They're still together this day. I, talked to George last year, and now they have kids of their own who are grown up. And it's beautiful to see this being passed down through the generations, how George and his wife's daughter has such a different attitude toward life than George had when I
Mhm.
first knew him. So it's never too late to have a happy childhood. You can always rechange and change and re-edit the programming of the past. I started out in a very rough way in my lifetime. My father died before my mother was pregnant with me, and my mother stopped eating and went from being a 120-pound woman to being an 89-pound woman. That's not good if you're pregnant at the same time. And so by the time I was born, everything had reset itself in my hypothalamus. And so I ate everything in sight. I became very fat. As a baby, I was trying to overcome that starvation, but the starvation didn't even happen to me, but it did. I was there for it. And so I didn't overcome that problem. If you look at me now, I'm athletic looking old guy. I'm in my 70s now, almost about to turn 80. And I'm about 5'11" and weigh about 185, 90 pounds. Don't know what that is in your language, but it's kind of tall and athletic looking over here. So that's what I look like now. But if you see me as a baby, you wouldn't have believed that because I was all round and jiggly and fat. So it's never too late to change. I changed mine when I was 24 years old. I uh, got rid of my obesity problem by eating nothing that I had eaten before for the next year. In other words, for the next year, I only ate food that I'd never eaten before. And I, you can have you write a book about it maybe and call it the Diana diet.
I love that. And it's very optimistic that we can change all of those things that we didn't have control once upon a time, right? But when you say and put a new program, how do we put it?
We'll start with the basics. Change one word. I cannot to I can. See, like when I was overweight, when I was obese, my mind said, I have to be obese. It says, I cannot be slender. But
Mhm.
I put a new program is, which is I can be a healthy body weight for my height. And gradually over the years, I got to the, well, it didn't take me, it took me about a year. And then I got down to a healthy body weight.
Mhm.
Um, but for the last 50 years, who cares that it took me a year?
Mhm. So it's kind of repeating to ourselves what we would like to achieve.
Yes, in fact, that's very important to you mention that. It's the word you're looking for is commitment. It takes commitment to bring forth your true self, to bring forth your essence, to bring forth who you are. It requires commitment to get rid of your upper limits. And
Mhm.
I mean, think of what commitment really means. If you go back and look at the two Latin words it derives from, it means to bring yourself together and set forth in a specific direction. So in football, you get up off the bench and you run onto the field. If you're a driver, you get in the seat and turn on the car.
Mhm.
If
I
like
love
I grew up in Florida where there is no snow. I never saw even a tiny piece of snow until I was 23 years old. But guess what I did as soon as I saw snow? I wanted to learn to ski. And you should have seen me. I was the worst skier on the slope. I mean, I fell about I fell so many times the first day that I could hardly get out of bed the next day. I was so sore, but I made myself do it. And gradually I got to be a pretty decent skier. And it's the same way that an automatic pilot gets a huge plane with 300 people in it from Munich to LA. I've made that flight many times. I've stepped on the plane in Munich and gotten off the plane in LA. The plane didn't get there in a straight line. It has an automatic pilot. It says, okay, we commit to getting to LA. And then, oh, we're drifting. Correct a little to the left. Oh, we're drifting. Correct a little to the right. Oh, we're drifting. Correct to the left. So
Mhm.
it gets to Los Angeles by being wrong most of the time because it's willing to recommit. And that's what we need to learn for ourselves. A lot of people, I used to work with a lot of people that were obese because I'd had some success struggling with obesity. All the local psychiatrists and psychologists referred their obese clients to me. So, but what I found with obese people is they often have an all or nothing thinking. They go on a diet, and then about noon, they have a stick of gum, which wasn't on their diet, which maybe has 15 calories in it. And then they say, oh, I've broken my thing, so I'll eat a box of cookies. So they eat a box of cookies that has 1,500 calories in it, not 15 calories. And so they have this all or nothing kind of thinking. So one of the things I had to do, and many others have to do, is overcome that all or nothing thinking by realizing that life is commitment, drift, recommitment, drift, recommitment.
Commitment. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And all of that requires effort, 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 effort.
No, it requires attention, attention, attention. But attention doesn't weigh anything and it doesn't cause calories and it doesn't eat up calories. Attention is what you're giving me right now and I'm giving you. And to me, this is no effort.
All right, so it requires all of that requires attention, 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 and not so much effort, as you said, right?
Yeah, in fact, if you find yourself efforting, that's not the right direction. The universe doesn't work that way. I mean, the universe does some dramatic things, but it doesn't effort. Like I have 7 wonderful, magnificent old oak trees on my property here. And every year they drop their acorns,
Mhm.
but they do it effortlessly. You don't see it going, "Oh, I gotta drop my acorns. Oh, no, I dropped my acorns." The oak tree doesn't think like that. It just drops its acorns. And the same thing, we human beings are passing through a phase of our development of our brains where we can both use our brains to create magnificent things and also criticize ourselves the whole time we're doing it so we don't get to appreciate the fact that we're building the Taj Mahal or writing the
Yeah,
symphony or whatever it is.
yeah. And now I want to go back to something else that you have mentioned about fears. We humans definitely have different kinds of fears, but I have understood by my own journey and analyzing other people's also fears in my work that we have like an ultimate fear of death that is covered up by a lot of other fears, but if we peel the onion, somehow it's like fear of death, fear of the unknown, fear of the things that we would never ever understand. So, how can we overcome that basically?
Well, that is, I want to quibble with your word overcome because that implies that you would need to triumph over something.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it works that way at all. That um, I would invite you to let go of the part of you that thinks you need to overcome things. Because letting go of that lets go of a level of cognition that we don't really need to live successful lives. Just like the oak tree doesn't need to suffer to produce its acorn. You can very gently and effortlessly and joyfully allow your creativity to blossom. Or you could suffer with your creativity and require alcohol to do it or drugs or you have to be mean to your family. You can find creative people who do all of those things. I've worked with a lot of them, but it's not necessary, is it? In fact, I just had a flash of a memory here. I was working with a person who sings blues songs mostly. And he's famous for his blues songs, very sad songs. And I said, well, that's great for your music, but do you realize you don't need to live your life that way? You don't need to live your life as a one long blues song. You could have one part of you that does that for your work, and then you could have a good time with the rest of your life. Just like, if I were a diamond cutter, I'd have to chip, 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 really focus for a little time. But I wouldn't go home that night and listen to my partner going chip, 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 chipping away at what they said. That wouldn't be a good idea. And so, my invitation to him and to all of us is no matter how much you think you need to suffer to do your job or to have your creativity, think about that. See if you could maybe do it with less effort. Because I can promise you, because I've had this experience thousands of times, that when I invite somebody to enjoy their experience, the same experience they were suffering with 10 minutes ago, a big life transformation happens. Like I say to a person, your anxiety is not what's making you miserable, it's resisting your anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
While you're with me, just let go of that resistance and tell me about it. Don't try to package it. Just tell me where are you feeling that in your body? Where are you feeling that in your belly? Where are you feeling that in your throat? So as people begin to make friends with anxiety, fear, anger, whatever it is that they're not being friends with, then they become the outer problem goes away because you've handled problems down at the source rather than trying to you know, fix a damaged rose by spraying it and trying to give it life again. It has its life of its own.
Yeah, it's so contradictory that all those parts of ourselves that are connected with the upper limit problem, they basically want to protect us, but at the same time, they're basically preventing us from expansion, from living like a better life. And I think that, as you said, those parts of ourselves, they want to be acknowledged. They want love. They want understanding, right? And not.
That's right. In fact, like if you have a headache, in my opinion, that's a bid for attention to tune into what you might be storing some anger about. Because in my work, I've helped people with headaches stop their headaches by getting in touch with the underlying emotion, which in many cases, like for tension headaches, particularly, has to do with repressed anger. Very nice people stuff their anger back in the back of their heads, and try to make it go away, but it comes because it wants attention. You mentioned death a while ago, and I do think that right down at the core of fear is fear of death. That we need to. I would say there are two main fears. One is disappearing into nothingness. That would be one direction that fear of death takes. The other direction is exploding out into nothingness, that a
Mhm.
lot of people resist. They're afraid of their creativity because they're afraid it'll make them crazy, so they, you know, but any good therapist will tell them, go ahead, take the brakes off your creativity, let it come on through, find an outlet for it. Don't drive with one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brakes all the time.
But how do you connect a fear of death with creativity? That was.
Well, they're both the same thing in a way, because if you think about it, creativity is bringing something out of nothing. And then the fear of death has to do with going back into nothing. That
Mm.
most people experience what's unthinkable about death is that since we've always been here when life is occurring, it's unthinkable not to be here. You can't think of that because your brain has never done that. You have to kind of uh, go down into the evolutionary path that you took to get here in order to really uncover the ability to kind of let go and let the universal forces be as they may. So you don't try to control the part of the universe that you don't have any control over. There are plenty of things in the universe that we do have control over.
Yeah.
We do have control over what we put in our mouth, or whether you go for a walk or lie down for a nap. So there are lots of things we do have control over, but there are lots of things we don't. And so it's ridiculous to try to control them. And so rather than trying to control your fear, I say treat it like a friend and say, what are you scared about today? And then your fear will tell you once you begin to develop that um, friendship relationship with it.
Yeah, facing the fear is the way out.
Definitely. Not only facing it, but feeling it.
Feeling it with
Let
the
yourself,
body. Yeah. Yes.
yeah, that's a key part, because a lot of people have been so programmed to handle things with their brain, their mind, that it doesn't occur to them that their mind extends way down below their
Body.
brain. Like feelings, according to what I've read, only take about a 20th of a second. Like if you step on something painful, it only takes a 20th of a second to get that from the bottom of your foot to your brain. It's very, very quick. And same thing with other feelings too: fear, sexual feelings, anger, sorrow. All of those are valid parts of life that we need to learn to pay attention to and give attention to, and not be afraid to let ourselves feel them.
To embody that. Yeah. And now if you don't mind, I want to discuss the components of the upper limit problem in more detail with you. You share 4 components in your book, and one of them we already mentioned. That's the feeling fundamentally flawed, right? We've discussed that. And the other one is the second one is disloyalty and abandonment.
Yes. A lot of us feel like that if we're going to grow emotionally, it will be disloyal or leave behind people that we love and care for us and that cared for us in the past. And so it's a fear, usually a fear of letting go of people that you may not agree with their way of thinking or their way of being or their way of feeling anymore, but you still have a great deal of love and affection for them. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's a very tricky thing that most of us don't do a very good job with, separating really from our parents and separating from the belief systems of the past. In fact, there are lots and lots of cultures that even the attempt to separate from the belief system can get you in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that there are a lot of people who are not resonating with their environment anymore because
Yeah.
they have outgrown the environment and they feel that a change is needed. But at the same time, this change is associated, as we said, disloyalty, abandonment, fear of loneliness, guilt, shame, so many things, so many things. So, what is the resolution? Did you have such a case, by the way, in your life where you needed to leave somebody or like a certain environment because you have outgrown that environment? And how did you cope with that?
Well,
Shame.
that's a great
Oh,
question. Well, just speaking personally, when I was 22, my grandmother died, and she and I were very close. She had been more my mother than my real mother had been. Um, and when my grandmother died, I went into a real downward spike, where I was really depressed. Although at the time, this goes back into the 1960s, 1965. There weren't things like antidepressants and things like that, which maybe was a good thing in a way because I had to kind of go through it myself. But I remember being just sitting in my backyard for 6 weeks, just not wanting to do anything. And then my way out of that, I got into this really toxic relationship that I almost regretted from the minute I got into it, but I was so down in the grief of my grandmother's death and so kind of addicted to this toxic relationship that I ended up being with her on and off for 3 or 4 years. And so I don't think any part of me that exists today and knows what love is, I didn't know any of that at the time. I think I got into this relationship almost like a drug or a salve to kind of help me move through this very painful place. And so as soon as I kind of woke up, I had to leave behind that relationship. And, my mother was really opposed, even though I was miserable. She says it's best to stay in there and just be with the misery than leave behind the relationship because there'd never been a divorce in my family, in 300 years or something. And uh, so the fact that I was even thinking about divorce was right, even though I'd only been married for a couple of years, it was still the same kind of disloyalty and abandonment programming that I had to get out from under, because it was not just leaving behind a toxic relationship. It was, in a way, leaving behind a relationship with my mother because I had to say, okay, look, I'm going to have to do this my own way. And then
mm,
to make matters worse, after I split up with Linda, was her name, a couple of years later, my brother, who was kind of the unshakable rock, the firstborn of the family, he decided to get a divorce too. And so I kind of took the blame for that, that I'd started this trend that then spilled over into my older brother, even though he was 8 years older than I was. Um, but at some point you do have to, it may not involve divorce or leaving geographically a place or anything like that, but we all need to separate ourselves from the belief systems in the past, because if you don't, you're very liable to pass the same negative belief, limiting belief down to your kids and their kids and so on down the chain. At some point, people have to wake up and realize, it's like Katie and I have had the great benefit of knowing Oprah Winfrey for 35 years now. We were first on her show in 91, I think. So what's that, like 30 some years ago? Anyway, a long time.
Mhm.
But she would be a great example because she had one of these really rough starts, and then, being Black and Mississippi and, you know, having a tendency to be obese and those kinds of things, they almost seem insurmountable. But she keeps having the ability to reinvent herself. She wanted to work for a television station, and by golly, she reinvented herself so she got a job at a little public access station in Baltimore, and then next thing you knew, she's producing shows for them. And old guys like me and Wayne Dwyer, we knew her from way back, and um, that kind of thing. It's been so wonderful to see her keep reinventing herself to being a billionaire, now retired, of course, but just an amazing example of what human beings can, given our resilience, can reinvent ourselves for.
Here, again, we need to change some beliefs, and we can do that through repetition and also attention so that we can reinvent ourselves, because it's like a lot of things we have to deal with in order to make such a change, right?
Exactly. And that's where commitment becomes so important. And people realize commitment is your starting place. You're going to drift. We
And
teach it
that's
here at our institute. We say, catch the drift, make the shift. Catch
yes,
the drift, make the shift.
yeah,
And don't hold yourself to perfection. Realize you're going to drift occasionally. You are a lovable child of the universe, and even lovable childs of the universe drift occasionally. And we need to catch ourselves and come back to our purpose, come back to our mission.
love that. And then we go to the fourth component, which is to the third one, I'm sorry, which is believing that more success brings a bigger burden.
I work with a lot of really successful people that could be a lot more successful, but they have this particular limiting belief. They say, my life is so insanely busy now. If I'm even more successful, it's going to be even more insanely busy. So that's the belief that my current situation is a burden. More success
It's
would
more.
mean more burden. And in a way, they're right, because if they try to have more success with what they're already doing, if they do more and more of what they're doing, of course, they're going to have more of a burden. But what the real problem is, many successful people get trapped in what I call their zone of excellence. It's not your genius zone. It's not what you really, really, really love to do, but it's what you're good at doing and what you can reliably make money and please the people around you doing. A client of mine used to be the biggest real estate developer in a very popular Caribbean country. And then a hurricane came along and basically wiped him out. And he said to me later, you know what the hardest part of no longer being a multimillionaire is? And I said, no. He said, it's my kids. They got so used to flying first class that they just hate to fly coach now. You know, that's in a way, that's a great problem to have, isn't it? Your kids being upset at having to fly coach again. But in a way, it says that we get used to being wherever we are, and then whatever disruption, like a guy back during the Great Depression, his net worth went down from $65 million to $3 million in one day. And he jumped out the window and committed suicide. And I've always wondered, on the way down, did a little part of him think, hey, wait a minute, $3 million, that's not bad. You know,
Mhm.
in 1929, that's good money. But he had so locked in his identity at 65 million that 3 million felt like a pauper, and
Yeah.
death was better. And so, in a way, that third situation people find themselves in in a way, it gets worse as you get more successful because a lot of times all your success has been in your zone of excellence. And it takes a big bunch of courage to go, okay, I know I can do that, but can I do this? Can I do what I really love to do? And that's a big moment. I've been privileged to be part of that moment so many, many, many times. And I just never get tired of it because I know that magic is going to occur. Because if a person can do that much in their zone of excellence, imagine what they can do in their zone of genius.
Yeah. And you mentioned some of those stories in your book. It's like amazing, really amazing to read all of that.
Oh, I want to call your attention to something.
Yeah.
I have a new one out called Your Big Leap Year. I don't know. I don't think it's made it to Germany and Bulgaria yet, but it just came out this past year. And it's a day at a time book. That, in other words, day one, day two, day three, and
Oh,
each
okay.
day has a big leap on it. And so you get 365 big leaps. And so probably only can get it in English now, but that's available and will be. I know in Germany, they just bought the rights to the big leap in German. So I don't know if they're going to call it Der große Sprung or what, but it'll be coming over there in the next year or so.
When shall we expect this book to be in Europe, to be published in Europe? Yeah,
Probably over the next year or so.
over the next year or so. Okay, perfect. Looking forward to that. If we get into our zone of genius, then most likely we'll overcome the belief that success is actually a burden, because it will be more, we'll feel more at ease while we are doing the things that we really love.
Yes. And as you spend more time in your genius zone, you're basically doing two things. You're doing what you most love to do, and you're doing what makes your biggest contribution to the world. And so, those two things, look for that sweet spot in life where keep asking yourself big questions like, what do I most love to do? And what do I love to do that makes my biggest contribution to the world around me? Keep asking those big questions, and those keep steering you to your genius zone. I ask those questions every day of my life, and I'm about to turn 80, and I feel just as creative now. Well, since I turned 65, I've written 12 mystery novels. So a lot of people think they're supposed to retire when they're 65. I sort of retired from writing self-help books. I mostly write mystery novels now.
Amazing, amazing. We need to mention the last component for the upper limit problem. That's the crime of outshining. I must not expand to my full success, because if I did, I would outshine and make him, her look bad or feel bad. And I'm wondering, why do we fear that? Is
Well,
it
it's
a
mostly
general
out of
abandonment issue? Like that we will be left behind?
that's part of it, but I also think it has to do usually with brothers and sisters. The
Mm.
typical outshining person is maybe grew up in a family where there was a golden boy or a golden girl that was number one. And like Katie grew up in a family, and I did too, where my big brother is 8 years older than I am. And he was great at everything, you know. And so constantly when I went through school, I had his teachers who were always saying, you know, Mike was so good at math. Why are you so bad at math? You know, and and I still am, by the way. But fortunately, I'm a lot better at writing books than he is. He can still do the math, though. I I find though that what I had to do was come out from the shadow of Mike. And my wife, Katie, we've been together now for 44 years, and she had an older brother who was kind of the golden boy in the family. Everybody called him number one, and he was, you know, good at everything. And so both of us had to kind of learn to come out from behind those people out and learn how to be in the light ourselves. So look for situations where you're holding yourself back, where you don't think you can be the Oprah or you don't think you can be the whatever it is. You know, use that technique that our Tibetan friends teach called friendly cannibalism. If you see Oprah and you see, boy, I'd sure like to be on TV like that, instead of saying, oh, I couldn't do that, just go, take in that possibility. Won't hurt you a bit. Just it doesn't have any calories to it. Just own the possibility, slurp it in. And if you see somebody like me who's good at writing books, well, just maybe you got a book in you that you could write.
So can we summarize why is it so difficult for us humans to go into the zone of genius?
I think it's scary because the unknown is there. To get there, you have to wonder and be curious. And wondering takes you into the unknown. It's a friendly way to do it. We teach a lot here in our seminars about how to wonder, how to actually, get a curiosity, a healthy, benign curiosity going. And so the happiest people in the world, the happiest geniuses I've ever met are incredibly curious. Albert Einstein, I have an autographed picture of him behind me. He wondered about something in his notebooks. He wondered about a physics problem for 27 years every day. He was wondering about this. To me, that's very healthy because if you look at Einstein as an elder, he looks like he's having a good time.
Okay, thank you so much, Gay, for for this interview. I really appreciate your time. And as just an end of this episode, I would start a sentence, and I would like you to finish the sentence very quickly without too much thinking. It's that just the way I'm finishing every episode. If you don't mind, can we do that?
Sure.
All right. My life experience so far taught me that personal expansion is connected with
Our ability to breathe, our ability to expand, our ability particularly to open up and befriend our fear.
peace for me is.
Sitting next to Katie, my wife of 44 years, and our two cats, both of us reading and enjoying being next to each other.
Life challenges for me are
Always expanding into the unknown, always expanding, always wanting to know more about how I could express my genius.
if I could change one thing in the world for everyone, that would be.
People could let go of operating through their beliefs about the world and themselves and feel it, experience it directly.
And the last one, I really believe in. Yeah.
I really believe in the power of wonder. The power of invention comes out of the ability to wonder about what's possible.
Thank you so much, Gay. Thank you so much for your time. I love the conversation, and it was really a pleasure to meet you in kind of person. Thank you so much.
Come to California sometime soon.